Okay, I had a cat and a dog here. I don't know what they're doing. What are you guys doing? Eh? What are you guys doing? Well, okay then. Well, see you guys later, I guess. I guess they just didn't want to interrupt the video. It was kind of nice out, kind of ish. Nice being a relative term, temperature-wise. Okay, let's get into this. This is going to be a bit of a babble video because I didn't know what topic to really pick today, and I just got so many things I want to talk about that are kind of interesting and stuff like that. So I'm just going to do a babble video. So this is a professional babble video with a fat dog. Look at how fat her butt is. She's like 96 pounds. Oh, yeah, go hide your butt, eh? Yeah. Okay, anyway. Don't know if you saw that was my dog. So, where do I start? Well, they showed some footage, or they say it's footage, from the Canadian HMCS destroyer Toronto. That's now moving towards the Crimean Peninsula, so really provoking Russia, with a Spanish warship as well. And they're doing a, forget the name of the joint exercise, but basically it's, this is the part that kind of worries me a bit, and this is the whole thing that worries me about NATO and things like that, is that the warships are there to practice a training drill to see how well they can defend each other if they were attacked. And then they showed some of the pictures of the Su-24s that apparently when they buzzed the Toronto, they didn't just fly by. They actually circled the ship for about a half an hour. Okay. Now you have to understand, we are in the Russian waters. Now that said, let's flip back up here to Canada. There's kind of a bit of a tit for tat going on where the Russians are not necessarily in our waters, but they're very close. They're doing tons of strategic warship drills up in the Arctic there right now. And you can see it on RT and stuff like that. So what's ending up happening is these are basically shows of force. Now again, Canadian warships have just gotten a bit of a change. Our two supply ships are basically down, and they're not. One caught fire. The other one had an accident with one of our destroyers in 2012. And because these warships were only going to be in service for another year or two each, I think the whole lag time between the first ship and the fourth ship was like 4 years. So within 4 years, we would be replacing them anyway. Now, the problem with that is it wasn't worth to put the money in. So what we might be doing is basically, right now we have one destroyer, which is, I don't know where that destroyer quite is right now. It might be in the Strait of Hormuz. I think the last time I don't know where it is actually. It's the HMCS Athabaskan. It moves all over the place. It's a destroyer. It goes everywhere, right? Definitely a blue water boat. So that said, the other ones, well, our Halifax class frigates, well, they've been updated. I don't know how many of them got updated out of the 12, but at least 3 of them for sure. The Ottawa, the Toronto, and the Halifax itself. And they're pretty state of the art. Like they're good. They're good warships. Problem is there's so few of them. Now the Kingston class, I don't know how many of those are updated or whatever, but they're minesweepers. So they're wherever they're going to be. Total warships, I think we have is something like minus. I guess it's now 62, instead of 66, it's now 62. So with that said, the Russians have about 200 ships and submarines that they keep. Most of their navy is basically submarines. But the thing is they've got some pretty darn new ones, like the Bory class. I haven't seen what the Yazan class submarine looks like yet. It's supposed to be a lighter attack sub. I can imagine it's probably going to be a spin-off of the Akula 2 or something like that. But they still have those, the Akula 2s, the Alpha subs. The Alpha sub, I think, is the fastest submarine in the world, with 33 knots submerged. But they're loud. So loud is more of a detriment to you than anything. The quietest thing on the submarine is the loudest part of the submarine, right? So, and then when you make that thing quiet, then you have to find the next noise is the next loudest. So it's very hard to get these things really, really stealthy. But that said, they are kind of stealthy. Now that said, our submarines, they're pretty much coastal. Most of our ships, even our frigates, are kind of more coastal but they are over, again, they are over there. So with our warships being in the Baltic Sea and basically, not the Baltic, the Black Sea, and heading towards the Crimean Peninsula, that's definitely a provocation to Russia. So why now? Well, again, because Russia's doing their war gaming up in the Arctic. So again, like I said, Canada will be the battlefield between the United States and Russia. And we had Nigel Farage out there yesterday or the day before from the making of this video, sitting there, let's stop ticking off the Russians. And, talking about, hey, look, we go and we poke the bear. Why are we in the Ukraine in the first place? We're basically purposely provoking. And it was so nice to hear, even if he's not elected yet, a government official say what I've been saying. Basically, especially on the side where the narrative is completely the opposite. He's basically, look, we supported a coup in the Maidan, which led to the destabilization of the Ukraine, which now has a civil war going on. And look, the ceasefire is only on paper. Now, apparently, Nigel Farage is out there saying, hey, look, we shouldn't be in there in the first place, so to speak, is what I'm getting out of it. And we basically followed along on a U.S.-backed coup. Thank you very much, Mr. Farage, for speaking the truth. Because no matter how you look at it, the problem is people look at it from a biased point of view. I'm looking at it from a non-biased point of view, and no matter how you slice it, those cookies didn't get to the Maidan Square without U.S. help. You know what I mean? Victoria Nuland has basically been out there. They don't tell you in plain language, but they pretty much say, yeah, we support this government, this government, this government. Rather than, all this disaster could have been avoided had all they did was just let a natural election go through. Their guy probably would have won anyway. Why? Because everybody was sick of Yanukovych. But now we have genocide happening on one side of the country. Now, there was also, and I haven't found a link to this, it's just something I heard, the Ukrainian government is out there saying that the Russians basically did a strategic nuclear strike against the Donbass airport with one of the Iskander mobile launchers. Now, yes, Russia did set one of these off a couple of days ago or whatever, about a week ago, but that makes no sense to, now the Ukrainian military, they're not pulling back like Poroshenko said they would. They're not. They're just, they're still there. So again, the fighting's still going. Like it's insolvent. It's not going to stop. And the thing is, but a nuclear strike on an airport just to keep the main military back, makes no sense. Makes no sense. And if there was a real nuclear strike, it would be all over the world. And if there was a nuclear strike, trust me, it's not going to be against a little airport in the Crimea. Putin is not that stupid. You know what I mean? Like, if they used anything, what I heard on the counter of that was where there was a weapons depot. They were using it as a weapons depot, and when you blow up a weapons depot, you usually get big explosions. So no nukes whatsoever, just big explosions. However, I can't confirm anything. Hey, you! What are you barking at? She barks and wags her tail at the same time. Makes absolutely no sense. Oh. But anyway, yeah. Well, that hissing sound is my laundry. The big black blob of dog over there. That's just my cousin. So anyway, yeah, so that's what they're saying. So I don't think... Yeah, there's drills, but I highly doubt they would ever use a nuke on something that insignificant. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to use a nuke, they're going to nuke a city, they're going to nuke, they're going to do something drastic, right? So, now Canada has also kind of done a few things different than the United States. We just made a deal with South Korea for technology, and in return, we're going to give them mining expertise, so to speak, in South Korea. The technology, I'm not exactly sure what they're going to go with. It apparently has something to do with green energy. And this comes at a time of the climate change summit in New York City, which climate change is a hoax. We are ending at an end of a 209-year cycle, which is going to put us in a cold spell. There's a little bit of CO2, but the global warming is not man-made. We've been, arguably, and this is the big kicker, though. Oh, yeah, but the studies show that the planet is warming. This is true to a point. We've been warming since the last ice age. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that guy, like I say, when you look at the big picture, okay, like all the data they're using for this climate change thing comes from basically the 1970s. They go back a bit, to the 1800s and stuff like that. But we really, I think all total of data, we have maybe 150 years of data. Everything else is going to be coming out of the ground and core samples and that type of thing. That's how they're going to know what was happening where. And when you look at that, like, and they can kind of measure where the CO2 was at the time, it's all over the place. But the only thing that is consistent is the sun. Now, the sun was heating up in the 1980s, and now it's cooling. Now, because of the greenhouse, there's a little bit of a delay. So the sun cools, and then in 2011, the polarity, 2013, sorry, the polarity, or was it 2011? Anyway, one of those 2 years, the polarity of the sun flipped. And the sun is now in a less active state. Can you notice it? Well, you can, because there's like snow in September, you know. Now, you're going to get warm years, you're going to get cool years, but the point is where they put the sensors to say that there's global warming, they put it right outside the cities, and the cities naturally attract heat, so of course it's going to show, you know, a different, you know, a trend that we're warming, like astronomically. But also, too, if you put them in later in the day, it shows that we're cooling. So yeah, the data is not only manipulated, but it's really poorly thought out. However, the oceans are actually cooling. And when the oceans cool, we cool. There's 45% more ice in the Arctic than there's ever been. I mean, yes, it's not as thick, I get it. There's more polar bears than there's ever been. Yes, I get it. You know, these things are cycles. For example, this year, raccoons. I can't believe how many raccoons there are this year. One thing that's different this year is an effect called global greening, where you have basically, and I could prove this to you. We have global greening. Now, mind we've had so much raining, which would be probably where some of the greening's coming. Right now, because we're in September, that road down there, okay, right down the center of it is a kind of strip where there's kind of dead grass now because it's, you know, we're in September. But that was green all summer. That hasn't been like that for 20 years. You know, roughly about the time this yard, usually this gravel goes right to where that snowblower is over there. Yeah, put my finger on it. So, and this year it's, you know, because of the extra rain. Next thing I noticed, there's a lot of crickets in the ground, a lot of extra frogs, a lot of extra snakes this year. And then from there, I've noticed extra everything except for deer, because there's too many wolves and coyotes right now. But so everything's a cycle. You know, things are cycles. So global greening is actually on the rise, and that's usually cooler, you know, due to cooler, more rain and stuff like that. Now, yes, I do understand how the greenhouse works, and yes, where you have lots of greenhouse, it will displace warm air colder. But hurricanes are not historically at a 50-year low. Monsoons and stuff like that, I think since the 1800s. But yes, the storms are powerful, but what creates power in a storm? Cold air, not hot air. Even with the outdated 1800s style education you get in science and stuff when you're a kid, you know, it's pretty easy, you know, like everybody kind of knows that. But yet, and a lot of the stuff that the climatologists are using is just statements that people have made. There's nothing to back up what they've made. Now the CO2, let's talk about the CO2. Well, one of the parts of the global greening that's happening is because of a little bit of extra CO2. And the thing is how much have we changed the planet's temperature? Well, the amount of CO2, even if you add up the big polluters like China and India, and every polluter on the planet is less than 1% of the overall CO2. Less than 1%. Okay? What does that work out to? It's about 1,000th less than the lethal dose of CO2 for humans. So it's pretty low. It's pretty low. So to say that, you know, we influence maybe a little bit of extra carbon in the atmosphere, well, trees like that too, eh? You know, they kind of like that stuff, eh? As fast as we put it out, they suck it up. So, you know, we might actually be helping, not hindering. Now, where the problem, now this is the thing, the whole thing about what's the motive of and Russell Brand was talking about, what would Al Gore's motive be to lie about such a thing? Well, look at the house he lives in. You know, follow the money. Yes, the whole global governance thing is going to be brought in on green communism, Agenda 21. Get it, make it a religion. What's the religion? Global warming. Well, it's not warming, so we got to call it climate change. Why change the name of it? Because, well, climate change, is that term correct? Yes, it is. Why does the climate always change? It's been changing for 6,500 million years, or 6,500 billion years, the length of the planet. And when you look at it, like in the long term, you can realize, like for example, in the Cretaceous period, we humans couldn't live there. I mean, we'd probably go into a hypoxia giggle fit in the first 12 minutes, and then we'd be dead. You know, because the air was so thick. A lightning strike was like a nuke going off. You had dragonflies the size of freaking eagles, which is kind of cool. But you know, caterpillars like 30, 40 feet long. You know, like I mean, very rich and lush, but just too rich for us now. You know, you go back, 380 million years ago when life started on this planet. The atmosphere was so thin, we'd just die of, deprived of oxygen, you know. And before that, the atmosphere was too acidy. Before that, there was nothing. You know, there was no atmosphere. You know what I mean? So it goes. Now, even if you added volcanoes and stuff like that, I'm not saying earthquakes and stuff like that aren't a bit on the rise, but we don't know what's really causing them. I mean, they talk about atmospheric pollution. Well, they can start by stopping the chemtrails. Now you're probably saying, oh well, how can you call global warming and climate change a conspiracy, but not but chemtrails are real? Well, here's the thing. Okay, the science, when they want to make it illegal, okay, to say that there is no climate change, to be able to deny it, when they want to make science illegal to do that, what does that tell you? If it was real science, they would open the challenge. A way a scientist is supposed to work is say, okay, that is a beer bottle. Okay, no, it isn't. Let's prove why it's not a beer bottle until it's so conclusive that I can't disprove that it's a beer bottle. You know what I mean? Okay, so the point is, you're supposed to be scientists are supposed to be skeptic to to prove. Okay, well, here's what I think it is. Okay, let's see if I can prove it that it isn't. And that's how science is supposed to work. It works like that in every other genre. But now you got people out there trying to pass. Again, science is now political. So the good news is that the global warming thing is just a scam to create global carbon taxes. And there's not one person out there that will explain to you how carbon taxes will offset global warming. It's the same thing. It's basically carbon credits, but they call it carbon tax. So instead of just doing it between companies, they're going to make the money off of everybody. And it's, and at that point, basically everybody's, again, the idea, Karl Marx said it best, get a progressive tax to eventually tax people out of their wealth, their land, and everything. Right on the CBC today, they're saying, look, most people in urban areas are starting to give up their cars. They can't afford them. Oh, but that's better for the planet. Not necessarily. I mean, again, yeah, you look at places like India and China. Okay, yeah, major pollution there. Okay, but Canada, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying we don't have pollution, but and we can clean up that. You don't need to have a carbon tax to do this. Because, like, for me, a lot of people, when they hear that, okay, if you're against climate change, then you want big oil and stuff. No, I don't. But what I'm saying is, I don't want the control of the UN, global governance, coming in and saying, well, because of climate change, we have to have international standards. These international standards will get you corralled into the city. And it's now been openly admitted. People are moving back to the cities. Why? Because they can't afford to live. Houses are getting smaller. They want everybody to live in a shoebox. They're promoting that. It's social engineering. And once you see it for what it is, I mean, that's what it is. So, but you have to brainwash people into this climate hysteria that they don't quite understand. Again, as we see in the next few years, we're already starting to see that, yes, things are cooling down. Maybe in some areas, yes, it's hot. That's normal. Some areas will get, hottest records on, hottest temperatures on record. That's going to happen, and it's going to fluctuate from year to year. But you are going to notice the trend that, especially if the Arctic's 45% bigger than what it was, that might keep a lot of hotter air down low. So you'll see droughts near the equator and stuff like that. That's what you're going to see. But everywhere else is going to be pretty much covered in ice and snow. Like, again, we won't know until and the thing is we don't have all the facts. We don't have all the variables. There's no way for us to truly, truly know exactly what nature's doing. But there are cycles, and we're ending up on a end of a 209-year cycle, which puts us in a cold period. That's just the way it is. So, it doesn't mean we're going to have an ice age overnight, but the last ice age only took 3 years to come in. They did core sampling or core drilling. They said, hey, whoa, that happened pretty fast, and it stayed for 10,000. The one before that took thousands of years to go into. So there's variables that we can't account for, and because of that, there's no way for us to say there's global warming or global cooling based upon man-made. And not only that, it's the CO2 that again. Plants like the CO2. That's why we have global greening. So if anything, we're probably a benefit. Where the real effort should be on taking care of the environment is poisonous stuff in the atmosphere, like chemtrails is number one. China builds about two coal plants per week, okay, with no filters in the stack. So yeah, they're just polluting, poisoning, and it takes about 3 weeks for the air to get around, for that to cycle around the planet. So now they're talking. Now, don't get me wrong; they're not, because NAFTA turned a blind eye to this for years about India and China be producing stuff dirty like that. But now China and India, okay, are now kind of, especially India, is kind of pushing away from the United States, saying we're going to go more with China because we'd rather play well with China because they're our neighbors, and we're going to start using their currency. You have to understand there's a currency war going on right now, which is a part of the big kind of global war thing that we're in. We're in basically World War III, but it goes currency war, trade war. Well, right now for the trade part of it, China is conquering everything. So the United States is losing people. Countries, even Canada, we're now looking at other people to export our oil to, because the United States has a cap on how much oil they can export and how much they can buy. We don't, so we can export our oil and lower the price, and stuff like that. So it's a benefit to us. Now the thing is with China, kind of buying up all of the world's reserves of gold and silver so that the U.S. It's not because they just want to back their currency. They want to make sure that the U.S. dollar has no place to go and it will collapse. So now what do you hear about this climate change meeting, which is kind of odd that it, they would bring it up in this one, but it makes perfect sense why they are. Now they're going to talk about the pollution in India and China. The Kyoto Accord, that's why Canada never signed it, and I'm glad we didn't, is because they were, basically developing nations didn't have to do anything to clean up the planet. Now you got Obama out there saying, oh, we're all on one planet, we're all doing. He's doing this not for the good of his heart, and he's not doing this because it is the right way to go. He's doing this because the U.S. dollar has no place to go, so they need to put some sort of barriers on China. They need to squeeze them economically. So you get the international community, which he's such a big fan of, and you start cracking down on China. So they can no longer put lead paint in children's toys. You guys have to modernize your coal plants, stuff like that. It'll break their economy overnight. That's what it's about, because we have tariffs against this because it's we can't stop you from manufacturing it, but if you want to sell it here, basically what Obama done to the coal plant industry in the United States, which had scrubbers and was cleaner than anything coming out of China. But basically the idea is that they'll put enough tariffs and stuff like that on the products that they're no longer, even with slave labor or mechanized labor. Hey, Gazoo, how's it going, buddy? It won't basically matter. Like they will not be able to sell the stuff cheap enough. It's going to hurt them economically. And China's in this war as well, even though it looks like they're sitting back and just kind of staying neutral. But they're in it because Russia is the muscle that the United States wants to get out of the way, but China is the economy that they want to get out of the way, right? So that's what that's about. And when we see all these new laws and regulations going towards China cleaning up its environment, that's when you're going to see China have a hard time, and that's what that's about. But that said, if we make things in our own country, like this idea that we manufacture raw resources, send them overseas somewhere to turn it into a product and then buy it back through, once they buy the product, then we'll send it to the States, then from the States we'll send it to Canada. How about we just build it here? There's no way people can argue with me that this globalization makes things cheaper. It does not. Because at the end of the day, all it does is drive down wages, and without good wages, you can't have good environment. You can't. Why? Because you can't afford it. And the Agenda 21 stuff, the other day with that new addition to the Georgia Guidestones, God knows what's happened with that, saying 2014 on it. Very creepy. Don't know what it's going to symbolize, but it's symbolizing something. So the idea here in North America is to basically have everybody live in the cities and just basically tax them off their land. They've been doing it for years, stuff like that. But if we wanted to really increase productivity and have a greener planet, we need to start with the basics. Farming. Everybody has a micro farm. Everybody's taking care. No food shortages. You have to understand the reason why we have food shortages in the world and stuff like that. Not because there's too many people. It's because of artificial scarcity. Year 1900, we have only something like 1 or 3% of the amount of farmers we had in the 1900s. A lot of people, mind you, want to get out of that kind of business because it is hard work. But on the other hand, you get regulated out of it, and that's the whole point of it, is to get you off your land, and everybody basically becomes slaves. But with what's going on, I know this is a bit of a jump around video, but like I say, it's kind of I didn't know what topic to do today. It was just kind of all over the place. We have Ebola, where they're estimating 1.4 million or 1.5 million people in the next 4 months are going to get this. They're really pushing the climate change thing. It's a narrative. It's not objective. You can't refuse it. You can't. I've looked at the arguments on both sides, and I keep coming to the conclusion that no, global warming is not man-made. It has more to do with the sun and nature just doing what it does. I mean, who knows what all the a current shifts somewhere in the ocean, butterfly effect. Next thing you know, you either got a hot planet or a cold planet. There's all kinds of stuff like that, and there's just too many variables. But to me, Al Gore's hockey stick doesn't. Again, we've got global greening going on because of the slight extra CO2. Now, with that said, yeah, they're going to find again, and the thing is you can prove or disprove global warming depending on where you look. So what that tells me is that if you look in a hot area and you find hot numbers, and you look in a cold area and you find cold numbers. It's kind of like selective science, so to speak. But if you look all over the place, then it's sporadic. You can't nail it down. But the only thing that I've found that seems to hold true and that seems to work almost completely perfectly is coinciding with the sun. So people say, no, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. Well, yeah, with a little extra greenhouse, like for example not the medieval warm period. The medieval warm period may not be the greatest of examples of global warming and stuff like that, but or lack thereof. But the Roman in the Roman times, the temperatures, the CO2 was roughly about the same, and the temperature is roughly about the same as it is now. So again, like the more you look at it, the more you realize that the climate just kind of, Mother Nature knows what she's doing, not us. So, plus, just the simple answer by, again, regulating all your business away. This is a problem with and I know a lot of people out there are good intentioned on it. Look, if you want to go after the big polluters, I'm okay for that. Say, okay, yeah, here's the new regulations. Okay, it's going to spike prices and things a bit, but rather than buy stuff from China and India, we build it here and we build it with better regulations. Okay, fair enough. But that's protectionism. Yeah, but it's not globalism. That's why I'm more nationalistic. You avoid all this crazy stuff. That said, Canada hasn't met all its environmental emissions. Our environmental emissions are nothing in comparison to a lot of other countries. Maybe, other than third world countries that have no industry whatsoever. Like the amount of emissions that come out of the oil sands, again, it's it looks devastating, but the stuff replenishes itself. Once they moved out of an area after 30 years, you can't tell that they were there. Yes, the poisoning of the water. Yeah, there is poisoning of the water with the chemicals used to separate the bitumen. Yeah, that work on stuff like that. So for me, when it comes to the environment, yeah, I want to protect it, but the best way to protect it is to have a bunch of small businesses. For example, fossil fuels. They're talking now about making cars 70% more fuel efficient, but they could have done this years ago. Now, the electric car thing, every time I hear the thing about the electric cars, you have to understand, electric cars work in California. They don't work in Canada. Why? Well, they'll work from maybe spring till fall. Then once the temperature gets cold, man, you're going to be sucking up the juice to keep those batteries not only charged, but heated. It gets cold here. Minus 40 batteries don't like minus 40. Canadian Tire, okay, they love minus 40. Why? They're like, we're going to sell a ton of batteries. Why? Guy comes in, battery's dead. Grab a new one. You know what I mean? It's murder on vehicles up here. Like, people don't realize, like, the average lifespan of a vehicle in Canada is about 11 years. But after about 5 or 6, you're going to be patching it and doing all, rust proofing it. And even if you rust proof it from day one, it's still, because we have to have salt on the roads. Now, thing is with the environmental laws, we have a lot less salt on the roads, but the human toll on this is a lot more people go in the ditch and die. So you see what I mean? Like, balancing that stuff is very, very tricky. Now, here's one thing that they could do, and I mean, I'm not saying there isn't other, and this is what kills me about the climate, these global warming people, is that we need to use renewable green energy. Well, here's the problem. You can't get something for nothing. There's nothing, okay, an electric motor is about 60% efficient. A combustion engine is about 30% efficient on average. A diesel is a little bit better, maybe 40% efficient to run. So it means you need 60% input to get 40% output on a diesel. Okay, you need 70% energy input to run to get 30% out. Now, a windmill which is great when there's wind, but they're costly. They're not that efficient per kilowatt hour, because by the time you install the thing, and again, when we look at a hydro dam, I don't know why we try to turn away from hydro dams. Oh, but it wrecks such an area. No, it doesn't really. I mean, you have fish swimming around in a hydro all over the areas of a hydro dam. Some of the best fishing is at the foot of a dam. So this idea that, oh, it pollutes so much, and no, it's one of the cleanest energies you could possibly get. Do our hydro dams need to be renovated and, better generators and stuff in there? Yeah, sure, yeah. Advance them, make them cleaner, make them more reliable, more efficient, more powerful. But you cannot, like for one, about the size of this room, you can put in a turbine that will probably produce the power consistently, non-stop, regardless if there's wind, sunlight, or not. And it will produce probably the same amount of power as about 1,000 windmills. That will take up. I mean, if you ever driven from, I think they start in about Oakley to Oakley or San Bernardino, right down to almost Los Angeles, the wind farms along the highways there. Like, it's miles and miles and miles of wind farms. How is that green? Think of all the cable. Think about, right now, you have hydro dams. Okay, they work great. Sure, there is pollution from them, but and nuclear is even cleaner than that. Problem is when you have a problem with nuclear, Fukushima, Chernobyl, those type of things. Your cleanest energy you could possibly get is going to be hydroelectric. Now, that said, big power dams, do we need big power dams? Well, maybe, maybe not. Here's the thing. Regulations make it almost impossible for the average person to create their own power station. A small town like this could have a power station the size of this room, and it would power all 200 and some odd or 1,200 residents, nonstop, very small. That's how you do it. Small, micro light over these big industries. But that's the problem. The government doesn't want that. They make money off of the big power electric. I'm not saying we shouldn't have the hydroelectric dams like the big ones they have in Quebec here. But I mean, look, we power not only Quebec, but we power good parts of Ontario, and we power most of our power here in Quebec goes to the States. You know what I mean? So to tell me it's not efficient, yeah. Now, you look at the green belt where they put up all these windmills and solar panels, they're at a loss. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. And not only that, it's more expensive. It's about almost doubled the price from something like 7 cents per kilowatt hour to 14 cents per kilowatt hour in Ontario. Like, in Ontario, people are being basically bankrupted out of their houses because they can't afford to run them. So on an individual basis, wind and solar is good. But again, from about mid-November right through till about spring, you pretty much got no sunlight here. You get very short days when you do get light. January and February last year, I think I counted maybe 3 days with sunshine, and it was still cloudy on top of that. Wind, it's hit and miss. You can get a week. Middle of January, you can get a week, nothing moving, like just no wind, no sun. It's pretty gloomy. It gets pretty gloomy. It gets, you can't tell if it's 7 in the morning or 7 at night, or I'd say, maybe not, because 7 in the morning will be dark, 7 at night will be dark. But let's say you can't tell if it's noon or 4:30. You can't tell. Sundown at 4:30. You know what I mean? Like, it's, summertime. It's a total opposite. We get, sun up at 5 and sundown at 10. So okay, it'll work then. But solar heating, same thing. Those things are neat. But where you see that energy, like that's more for the south. Here, I think where you get a better thing is in like up north, for example. Everything's powered by fuel. Where I would put my effort. For example, legalize hemp crops just to, like decriminalize marijuana, okay? Just put it as a misdemeanor. Because, regulate it like alcohol. That's what I would do. Regulate it like alcohol. But hemp, okay, they used to use that in the 1930s. They can make anything out of hemp. I hate the smell of hemp. Hemp stinks like crap. With my eyes closed, I could tell you from walking beside a hippie, okay? I remember there used to be this girl, little hippie girl that used to work near where I worked. I don't know what her name was. She was a nice person, but oh my God, it's like she'd be behind you and you could smell the hemp. It's like, oh God, I hate that smell. But you can make stuff with it. It's value. It's renewable. You got a hemp crop in 4 months. That's better than canola. And that's better than corn. That's better than, So ethanol, the problem with it, we tried the ethanol here thing. The problem with the ethanol, it's 3 times more expensive to make, but it's renewable and it's clean. Now farmers, if they're they do very interesting things. They make their own. They use pigs to make methane, or cows, pigs, anything. Basically poop, and they bottle the methane. What about hydrogen? Well, again, you can't get something for nothing. Every green technology they put out there has problems. Hydrogen, you need electricity to make hydrogen. So you could, and the biggest problem with hydrogen is because it's 1,000 times more. It burns 1,000 times faster than fuel, meaning you really, really have a hard time containing this stuff. You have to keep it under, like 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 psi. So the thing about the hydrogen cars and stuff like that, they would be super, super, super efficient. You want to get 300 miles to the gallon, you take your most inefficient automotive engine and have a hydrogen supplement into that, and you will see the mileage go up. Problem is people would have to be smart enough to be able to change a hydrogen cylinder. Now, what happens if somebody rams into you with a hydrogen car? Oh no, big nuke, big mushroom cloud, you explode. No, because the second a hydrogen bottle would be pierced, it's already gone. You're not going to get a burn out. You're going to get a boom, not a burn. So that's why, on hydrogen tanks, they put blow-off valves and stuff like that. But, you could build things. I mean, look, back in the 1970s, every car weighed about 3,000 to 5,000 pounds, okay? Heavy cars. We moved to micro-light cars that we have now that are like 1,500 to, or maybe about 2,500 to 3,000 pounds. They're lighter, and they're all fiberglass and stuff like that. And the accidents are more fatal now than what they used to be. Because, would you be quiet? That's probably just Bubba. Bubba's a bulldog. There's my cousin's bulldog. My aunt usually takes him out for a walk. I don't see. Oh yeah, I can see him. There's Bubba out in the field. Big fat bulldog. He's so cute. She doesn't like Bubba. I know why you don't like Bubba. You're like just shut up. Lacey, get out of here. You're interrupting the video. I'm in deep discussion. Now I got a big dog head and you keep it down. Just keep it down. Okay. Animals always interrupting. So as I was saying about the hydrogen, you have to be able to store it. Now I have run an engine off of hydrogen. It's kind of cool. You get that little hydrogen hiccup, little blue flame come out there. So you can use these technologies. They're great technologies, but yes, we do need to invest in them. There's that I would be okay with. Algae biodiesel, that type of thing. They are experimenting. The problem is it creates a ton of smog. That's the same problem with the hemp fuel. Anything leafy like that tends to really kind of, you'll get your freaking greenhouse gas. That's for sure. He was like, I can't see you. It's green fog everywhere. Yeah. Why is there water all over the road? Anyway, so, which is another thing with the hydrogen. So interesting technologies, more efficient engines and stuff like that can be done. For example, the major automotive manufacturers out there, okay, they do purposely make, for example, like the F-150, the Ford F-150 and the Ford Ranger. The Ford Ranger was getting really good mileage, like really good mileage. My dad had an old Ford Ranger, and it got okay mileage for a pickup truck that size. The F-150s, they get gallons to the mile type of thing. They're guzzlers, right? They're big V8 engine, right? That's what we have. So what they did is they actually made the F-150s get better mileage, because the bigger trucks, to sell more of them, because everybody was just buying the smaller trucks and weren't buying the bigger trucks. And they made the Ford Rangers basically get worse mileage, so that not as many people would buy them. They'd only buy a small truck if they only needed a small truck. They wanted people to spend more on the bigger truck, right? So things like that. So you could change regulations to say, no, build the engine as efficient as you can. Now, trust me, big oil companies do not want fuel-efficient cars. But the thing is I don't know why they think that way. Because think about it this way. Okay, let's say the fuel, like right now, fuel in Canada, 80% of the price is tax. Okay, and most countries are like this. Let's say you have a car that lowers the demand. Okay, and when it lowers the demand, the prices will drop. Okay. So now let's say, okay, crap, we have to sell our fuel at half the cost that we're selling it right now. But we have engines that are putting out 1/10 the emissions that they're putting out now, which the technology exists. Okay, we can grow tomatoes in outer space. We can, it's about will, not, we can do this. Build the ultra Cadillac converter. I don't know. You can, but most importantly, start with the fuel. You start with the fuel. Add a hydrogen booster to it, just to get extra mileage. Have it as an option. So you buy your little hydrogen bottle, coming out at about 3 psi. You get 300 miles to the gallon, okay, and double the horsepower. Win, 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 and lower emissions, lower everything, and everything's good. So now you have a resource, okay, that you're charging half the price on, but it's going to last 3 times longer. So you're actually, in the long run, by the time you expand that resource, okay, you've actually sold 3 to 4 times more. You've made 3 to 4 times more, because even though the price dropped, it could have probably dropped right down to the bottom, but it didn't. So maybe I'm explaining it well, maybe I'm not. But the point is the technology is there. Other things, we can tap into thermal. Now look in New Brunswick. Was it New Brunswick that just had their election the other day? It was either New Brunswick or PEI. I think it was New Brunswick. And the Conservatives wanted to do fracking. The Liberals said, we're not sure yet, so that means they're going to do the fracking. That was the smart answer, was we'll wait and see. So fracking was probably the number one issue that got again, nobody wants the NDP because the NDP will keep you broke. NDP caters to welfare and communism. They're socialist communists is what they are. It's not what they say, it's what they do. That's, their whole agenda. Their mission, they don't have a mission statement. They don't want to have a mission because they don't want people to know the history of the NDP. It starts with communists. Was it Vic Taves, before he retired, they said, oh, well, they found a NDP member that had linked to the Communist Party in China. And? Well, I thought everybody knew that, like they're communists, like they're closet communists. But that's the thing about media, right? It's not transparent like that. They won't tell you that, right? And most people like the NDP say, oh, well, we're not, I'm not a communist. And the NDP people are probably saying, they're not communists. But you have to understand, when you look at what the party stands for, they're socialist communist. More socialist than communist, but they are socialist communists. And their take on, and Thomas Mulcair, his take on climate change and all that, again, he uses it more of a division type of thing because he's still looking for his issue, right? Same with Justin Trudeau. He's still looking for his issue to overthrow the Conservatives. But the thing is the issues, you usually stare them right in the face. And in this fracking thing, tell you the truth, I'm neutral on fracking because I don't know how bad it is or how good it is. I'm assuming it's not good. I'm assuming I'd rather invest in an industry, say like a hemp industry, make fuel, make whatever out of that, or a massive recycling. This is, again, something that we could do. They've already tried to do it in Toronto. So again, it's more expensive to do, but you can do it. Is they used hot water to steam down garbage rather than putting in landfills. And at the end, you have all this metal left over. You take the metal, you go recycle the metal. You don't really make money on it, but it's cleaner for the environment. They take burnable garbage, they use it as fuel. Now, they have things now. They're basically, the simplest way to describe how they make petrol, which we call gasoline here in North America, is basically a still. It's a still. Like, you take an object, okay, you heat it up till it gets to a gassy state. You have a tube that allows enough pressure to go through that. You don't blow the vat up. It's the same way you make moonshine, basically. And it goes into another kind of container that also, but it's filled with water. And what happens is, as the exhaust comes out, it builds up a gas. And that gas will pressure the water down until the gas starts to flow out of this tube. And then when it flows up the last tube, you've got gasoline or sour gas or whatever. They could do this with plastic. They can do this with tires. Not like we have a shortage of them. And just have maybe not a whole industry designed. Like, you're going to need, this is what a lot of people think. We say we need one industry to replace everything. No. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. You have a hydrogen industry. You have a solar industry. But most of that hydrogen and solar and all that stuff works on micro scale. It doesn't work on big scale. Because, like windmills. A windmill on the edge of somebody's house, look at the Darius rotor they put in Toronto. It blew up, twice? All of a sudden the NDP stopped talking about this great Darius rotor. It's just a thing about these things don't last long. How often do they replace a hydroelectric motor? Not very often. They do last long. These turbines last for, and you've got water everywhere. The stream size is irrelevant. The stream size is really irrelevant. All moving water is free energy. It's free energy. That's what it is. They make hydropower dams that are the size of the TV set there. Like they can do this, but they're regulated away. That's the thing. The average person is not allowed to do this. Now, yeah, you do need regulations on it so people aren't just damming off everything. But some things don't require dams, like, and there's, problems that people will have to work out. But you look at the old-fashioned water mills and stuff like that, the powered sawmills and everything like that. Just a bit of piping that made it happen, Now, some of that stuff you can do for yourself. Problem is we don't teach kids that stuff. We don't teach kids how to be ingenuitive in school. We teach them, at best, when they do learn something, it's from the 1800s. They don't. We need to modernize our textbooks big time, and not social. But all the stuff that they're modernizing in school is social engineering, which has its massive backfires to it too. So I guess this is a rant that kind of goes all over the place and stuff like that. But sometimes I like to do that too. And I think at the end of the day, again, climate change is a hoax. That's not the answer. Because, well, maybe it is, maybe it is. The thing is we don't have the answer. We do not know. That's the thing, because if you look here, it's climate change. You look here, it's global warming. You look here, it's global cooling. So in other words, there's different things going on, and we don't have all the variables. And a computer is only as useful as all the variables. I mean, when you look at the grand design of things, there's just way too much. We don't have enough data. If we look at trends are almost, and cycles, they're pretty accurate. They're pretty darn accurate. We're ending on a 209-year warming cycle. That's going to lead us into a cooling. And you're not going to see it overnight. It's usually, it takes a couple of years. But now, like I say, the planet, the Arctic's, look at this whole thing in the polar vortex thing, which technically is a correct term, but, the media just loves the polar vortex. Well, they're starting to talk about it already. They're saying, well, the Arctic's starting to suck up some air, or the Antarctic is starting to suck the air from the Arctic and stuff like that. That's why the polar caps melted in 2000, or the North Pole melted in 2012, is because all that air got sucked down. But now that air got sucked down into a cooler region, there's no cool air or no warm air to be sucked down now. So that's also why, because we got so much rain up here, that's probably why we got so much drought in the United States, is because it's just the cool air here is holding that warm air down there. Weatherman will tell you that. you know what I mean? You don't even need thermometers and stuff to do that, to figure that out. So I guess I'm rambling now, but as far as taking care of the planet, that's going to come from entrepreneurship. That's going to come from proper regulations. It's not going to come from the United Nations. It's not going to come from Al Gore type. It's not going to come from a carbon tax. It's not going to come from those type of things. It's going to come from people who are ingenuitive. There are a lot of, this lower your carbon footprint type of thing. Again, you have Al Gore out there telling everybody to, recycle their pop cans and, live in a shoebox. Meanwhile, the guy lives in a mansion, right? So, and same with Maurice Strauss. He has, 500 cottages? These guys made money off the global warming scam, and they were going to make more money because there's people brainwashed into thinking that is actually real. Meanwhile, the real answer is we don't know. Mother Nature does what she does. We could have an ice age tomorrow morning. We could have, something... completely, Mount St. Helens erupts again, or which may erupt is at some point is Keystone. That thing blows. Trust me, we're going to be breaking a cycle. You know what I mean? And it's going to get cold. The ash will keep you warm for a little bit, but once that ash cools, it's going to get cold. It's going to be. Chances are the amount of acid in the atmosphere would probably kill us anyway. So. I guess I guess I'm done my ramble. It's just I'm watching things going on in the news and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, just anyway. So anyway, hey, Gazoo, thanks for not interrupting my video. You want to say something? Yes, my name is Gazoo, and please send me 8 million cat treats in the name of saving the planet. I will save the planet by removing all cat treats on the planet. Is this true? Is this true, Gazoo? Okay, buddy. Anyway, there we go. Have a good day. G'day, hi, and welcome. Got a cat and a dog here. Okay, I had a cat and a dog here. I don't know what they're doing. What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? Well,
Okay then, well, see you guys later, I guess.
I guess they just didn't want to interrupt the video. It was kind of nice out, kind of ish. Nice being a relative term, temperature-wise. Okay, let's get into this. This is going to be a bit of a babble video because I didn't know what topic to really pick today, and I just got so many things I want to talk about that are kind of interesting and stuff like that. So I'm just going to do a babble video. So this is a professional babble video with a fat dog. Look at how fat her butt is. She's like 96 pounds. Oh, yeah, go hide your butt, eh? Yeah. Okay, anyway. Don't know if you saw that was my dog. So, where do I start? Well, they showed some footage, or they say it's footage, from the Canadian HMCS destroyer Toronto. That's now moving towards the Crimean Peninsula, so really provoking Russia, with a Spanish warship as well, and they're doing a, forget the name of the joint exercise, but basically it's, and this is the part that kind of worries me a bit, and this is the whole thing that worries me about NATO and things like that, is that the warships are there to practice a training drill to see how well they can defend each other if they were attacked. And then they showed some of the pictures of the Su-24s that apparently when they buzzed the Toronto, they didn't just fly by. They actually circled the ship for about a half an hour. Okay. Now you have to understand, we are in the Russian waters. Now that said, let's flip back up here to Canada. There's kind of a bit of a tit for tat going on where the Russians are not necessarily in our waters, but they're very close. They're doing tons of strategic warship drills up in the Arctic there right now. And you can see it on RT and stuff like that. So what's ending up happening is these are basically shows of force. Now again, Canadian warships have just gotten a bit of a change. Our two supply ships are basically down, and they're not. One caught fire. The other one had an accident with one of our destroyers in 2012. And because these warships were only going to be in service for another year or two each, I think the whole lag time between the first ship and the fourth ship was like 4 years. So within 4 years, we would be replacing them anyway. Now, the problem with that is it wasn't worth to put the money in. So what we might be doing is basically, right now we have one destroyer, which is, I don't know where that destroyer quite is right now. It might be in the Strait of Hormuz. I think the last time I don't know where it is actually. It's the HMCS Athabaskan. It moves all over the place. It's a destroyer. It goes everywhere, right? Definitely a blue water boat. So that said, the other ones, well, our Halifax class frigates, well, they've been updated. I don't know how many of them got updated out of the 12, but at least 3 of them for sure. The Ottawa, the Toronto, and the Halifax itself. And they're pretty state of the art. You know, like they're good. They're good warships. Problem is there's so few of them. Now the Kingston class, I don't know how many of those are updated or whatever, but they're minesweepers. So they're wherever they're going to be. Total warships, I think we have is something like minus. I guess it's now 62. Instead of 66, it's now 62. So with that said, the Russians have about 200 ships and submarines that they keep. Most of their navy is basically submarines. But the thing is they've got some pretty darn new ones, like the Bory class. I haven't seen what the Yazan class submarine looks like yet. It's supposed to be a lighter attack sub. I can imagine it's probably going to be a spin-off of the Akula 2 or something like that. But they still have those, the Akula 2s, the Alpha subs. The Alpha sub, I think, is the fastest submarine in the world, 33 knots submerged. But they're loud. So loud is more of a detriment to you than anything. The quietest thing on the submarine is the loudest part of the submarine, right? So, and then when you make that thing quiet, then you have to find the next noise is the next loudest. So it's very hard to get these things really, really stealthy. But that said, they are kind of stealthy. Now that said, our submarines, they're pretty much coastal. Most of our ships, even our frigates, are kind of more coastal but they are over, again, they are over there. So with our warships being in the Baltic Sea and basically, not the Baltic, the Black Sea, and heading towards the Crimean Peninsula, that's definitely a provocation to Russia. So why now? Well, again, because Russia's doing their war gaming up in the Arctic. So again, like I said, Canada will be the battlefield between the United States and Russia. And we had Nigel Farage out there yesterday or the day before for the making of this video, sitting there, let's stop ticking off the Russians. And, talking about, hey, look, we go and we poke the bear. Why are we in the Ukraine in the first place? We're basically purposely provoking. And it was so nice to hear, even if he's not a elected yet a government official say what I've been saying. On not basically, especially on the side where the narrative is completely the opposite. He's basically, look, we supported a coup in the Maidan, which led to the destabilization of the Ukraine, which now has a civil war going on. And look, the ceasefire is only on paper. Now, apparently, Nigel Farage is out there saying, hey, look, we shouldn't be in there in the first place, so to speak, is what I'm getting out of it. And, we basically followed along on a U.S.-backed coup. Thank you very much, Mr. Farage, for, speaking the truth. Because no matter how you look at it, the problem is people look at it from a biased point of view. I'm looking at it from a non-biased point of view, and no matter how you slice it, those cookies didn't get to the Maidan Square without U.S. help. You know what I mean? Yeah, Victoria Nuland has basically been out there. They don't tell you in plain language, but they pretty much say, yeah, we support this government, this government, this government. Rather than, all this disaster could have been avoided had all they did was just let a natural election go through. Their guy probably would have won anyway. Why? Because everybody was sick of Yanukovych. But now we have genocide happening on one side of the country. Now, there was also, and I haven't found a link to this, it's just something I heard, the Ukrainian government is out there saying that the Russians basically did a strategic nuclear strike against the Donbass airport with one of the, I think, Iskander mobile launchers. Now, yes, Russia did set one of these off a couple of days ago or whatever, about a week ago, but that makes no sense to, now the Ukrainian military, they're not pulling back like Poroshenko said they would. They're not. They're just, they're still there. So again, the fighting's still going. Like it's insolvent. It's not going to stop. And the thing is, but a nuclear strike on an airport just to keep the main military back, makes no sense. Makes no sense. And if there was a real nuclear strike, it would be